Hello, I'm Malcolm Cox, and this is A Little Bit of Luke, Part 3. We're looking at background to the book of Luke and also the themes within it, and today we're talking about the theme of the Gentiles. It does seem that Luke has a particular interest in Gentiles. There are many examples of Gentiles highlighted in the Gospel of Luke, but we'll look at that a bit more another time. Today we're looking at other clues to this theme that might have resonated with him because he himself was a Gentile. That's in a previous episode. First of all, here in Luke chapter 3, we have the example of John the Baptist. And at the end of John quoting Isaiah 40, he comes to this final phrase, and all people will see God's salvation. That's verse 6. All people will see God's salvation, not just the Israelites, all people, or all flesh is another translation. An emphasis there from John the Baptist, not just Jesus, that this is not just for the chosen people, but it is for all people whom God has placed on this earth. Then also in chapter 4 we have this. Jesus says, when questioned about some things, in verse 24, "Truly I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his hometown. I assure you, there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time when the sky was shut for 3.5 years. There was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, oh no, but to a widow in Zarephath, in the region of Sidon," in other words, a Gentile. "And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian." Jesus is pointing out that God has a concern for the Gentiles. He's really interested in them, and as he was in the Old Covenant, there were hints there. Now those hints are coming to fruition that this is for all people. This message of the gospel, the kingdom, is for all people. Not only that, chapter 7. In chapter 7, we won't read this whole section, but from chapter 7, verses 1 to verse 9, we see Jesus interacting with a centurion, and we are told of the faith of this centurion that so impressed Jesus. And the conclusion of this is in verse 9. When Jesus heard this, the faith of the centurion, when he heard this, he was amazed at him, and turning to the crowd following him, he said, "I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel." He could have said anywhere, but in Israel. He points out that this man has greater faith than anyone in Israel. He's commending him for his faith. He's pointing out that he's not an Israelite. Perhaps in some ways he's even celebrating the fact that he's a Gentile. And this again shows us that Luke, as well as Jesus, wanted us to know about this concern of God for the Gentiles. And finally, in chapter 13. In chapter 13, and in verse 28, we see this. "There will be weeping there and gnashing of teeth," Jesus is speaking, "when you see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the prophets in the kingdom of God, but you yourselves thrown out." He's talking to Israelites here. You yourselves, your fathers, the patriarchs, but you yourselves thrown out. People will come from east and west, from north and south, and will take their places at the feast in the kingdom of God. Indeed, there are those who are last who will be first, and the first who will be last. Again, Jesus is saying, just because you're an Israelite, no special privileges here. People outside of whom you expect are going to be in the kingdom of God. Are you ready to accept that reality? So we see that Jesus, John the Baptist, have a concern for the Gentiles. They're only reflecting God's heart for the Gentiles. And Luke wants to make sure this is recorded and communicated so that the people who read his gospel would understand God's concern for the Gentiles. Do we have a concern for people who we think God might not care about or we find difficult to love? Perhaps that's the challenge for us. What do you think? Any thoughts on this particular emphasis or why we have this? I'd like to know your thoughts. You can email me on mccx@mac.com. or you can leave a message anywhere you see this or hear this recording. Until the next time we get a little bit more of Luke, I hope you have a wonderful day and God bless.